What would you say to someone who really desires to be in worship ministry as like a pastor or a minister, but there are no opportunities around them? Welcome to the Luminate House Podcast. My name is Kalena, and I'm here with
Joe Garza.
You said that really deep. I'm here with Joe Garza, and
It's not often you get to say your whole first name.
Yeah, you should include your middle name too. Go ahead.
Jose Samuel Garza.
Oh, wow.
I'll say it very official.
That was great.
The third.
So I'm interviewing you today.
Oh my gosh, are you? What the heck?
I'm interviewing you.
Uh-huh.
Here's the
I'm
reason.
not 65, so.
Here's the reason why I'm interviewing you. I've seen you take a worship ministry, which I've seen you do this 3 times now. Take a worship ministry and almost double what the worship team like members were. When new leadership, comes in, it can mean losing people. And I've seen you do a really good job of not only retaining people and really building relationships with those people who have already been there, but then I've seen you take a worship ministry and literally double it in size. Our worship team is, I think, sitting at almost 50 people. And I don't think I don't think that's all that matters.
Right,
I think it's definitely like quality over quantity for sure. But we have a very quality worship team. The other things that I've seen you do is I've seen you change worship culture. I've seen you go in and I've seen you really be intentional about not changing things too quickly, but changing them. And then we're, 2-3 years down the road and the worship culture looks so different than when we came in. Okay. I've seen you really disciple people. So it's not like you're growing a team, you're changing the culture, but you're not taking care and shepherding of the people that you're over. So I've just seen you do things as a leader that I think are pretty incredible. And I have questions. So are you ready for me to ask you questions?
Sure. I mean, this is totally blindsiding me entirely. But yeah, I would love to answer any questions you have.
What would you say to someone that they really want to be in worship ministry? We're going to cut that part out. What would you say to someone who really desires to be in worship ministry as like a pastor or a minister, but there are no opportunities around them?
Yeah, I would say if you really feel called to being in worship ministry, you have to ask yourself the question, what are you willing to sacrifice? And for us, what that looked like was moving to a whole different city, a whole different town.
Yeah.
Sacrificing being close to family, and I think when you do that, you are expressing a trust in the Lord to say, God, I feel this calling you have on my life. And I know that wherever you are leading me, you'll be there. And so you're going to care for me. You're going to provide for me. And it's hard.
It is hard. It's hard to like pick up and go to somewhere like a church that you don't actually really know if it's like the right place to be at. Because there's also the aspect of like building a family while you're there, or taking a spouse with you like we did.
Or getting into ministry where you're single.
Yeah, and you're away from family.
Yeah. I also will say, if you feel called to worship ministry, it's that whole saying, if you do the job that you want to do before you get the job, then you will eventually get the job, something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right?
You're saying if you go ahead and act like you have the job that you want, so you're doing the actions that you would if you had that job, eventually it will become your job. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Okay. And you said it way better than I did. Yeah. But that's pretty much it, is like, if you want to do worship ministry, like start leading in places, like start like getting experience doing that, and start allowing people to speak into your ministry, start allowing people to start speaking into your leadership. And that will help grow you. You'll be gaining like relational equity with people because they'll see like you're leading in humility and you want to grow. And eventually like things will just happen. The Lord will just open doors.
Yeah. How important do you think networking is in worship ministry? And I think networking can have a negative connotation with it.
For sure.
But
Yeah.
I look at it more so as just making connections. How valuable is that, and how do you even do that?
I think organic networking is very different than, like you said, very different than like actually networking. Like, because people can smell a networker. Like people can sense like, oh, you're trying to make connections to benefit you, you know? And I think there's a very big difference between that and actually just making relationships because you care about the person you're making a relationship with. And people can see that, people can sense that, like, oh, you really like want to get to know me. Like, yeah, let's connect. You know? When it comes to networking, and like, are you saying in the sense of like networking to get a position or something, or like, what do you
know, I guess I asked that question for a couple reasons. Yes, if you are looking for something, but two, you know, I see a tendency where if you're at a church or even a certain size church, you may not think networking is valuable because there's a lot of people. Let's take our church, for example. I mean, the staff is very, very large and there's multiple campuses. And so you may think, well, I don't really need to network with other people. I don't really need to go out and make connections because my church is very large and there's a lot of staff. So, you know, do you think it's valuable when you're in a role like that to even do that? And even before you are in an actual full-time ministry role.
When it comes to a position, I heard someone say this one time, and I actually believe it. It's, well, not only a position, it could apply to a lot of places, but I heard someone say, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And I really believe that. I believe like relationships are valuable. Relationships are not only valuable because of, you know, the byproduct of where it could get you, right? I mean, that's just a reality of relationships. Like if you get fired, you need a job, you're calling people you know, and you're asking them, hey, I'm in a tough spot. Do you know of anything? That's just a byproduct. That shouldn't be the main goal, though. I do believe networking is really valuable. And I think even, you know, the thing that I feel like I hear the most from people of like networking and like why they don't like it is because they feel like they have to sell themselves or they have to like pitch themselves or like, and I don't think that way. I think it's more along the lines of like, just be yourself, just be natural, just be organic. If people connect with you, they connect. And then that's the networking. But don't try to like put yourself out there and make yourself into something you're not, you know, like be genuine. But I also think that when it comes to like presenting the value that you bring, especially to a worship ministry, a team, a church, you know, an organization, right? You're not really presenting the value that you bring. You're presenting the value that Christ has put in you.
That's good.
So that's how I think of it. And I think that's a very humble approach. Like, I feel like you can't be prideful in these things. And so you have to just agree with the Lord and saying, God, I'm going to present myself in the way that you have fashioned me. I'm going to present myself with the gifts that you have given me in full acknowledgement that they're from you. And I'm not going to feel guilty because I feel confident in what you can do through me.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, because I believe if you're walking in that fullness of what God has blessed you with, the gifts that he's given you, and you are not trying to be something that you're not, you will end up where you are supposed to be. And if you're trying to present yourself in a way that you're not, it may take you to places that are really not meant for you.
Yeah.
And I think I heard someone say, you know, I don't want to take a position somewhere because it looks like a good position if it's not really for me, because I'm not only taking my blessing, I'm also taking someone else's. Yeah. So let me ask you this question. What is like the weirdest...
You're beautiful, by the way. You know that?
You're going to make me nervous.
Really?
Yes.
I hope I would make you nervous.
Oh my gosh, babe. Okay, back to the questions. Okay, I got it.
All right.
What is the weirdest / funniest thing that you think has happened to you
in worship ministry?
Yes.
Oh gosh, really?
Yeah, tell the people.
Weirdest / funniest. Well, I do think it's worth mentioning that we led worship at a church that was being held in a gun range.
That's true.
That was definitely an experience. We'd get done with church and it would open at like 12:15 or 12:30 or something like that. It was something like that.
Yeah, it was like right after.
Really close. And so you hear just rounds popping off right after church.
Oh my
Amen.
gosh.
Guys, be blessed. Have a great week.
Well, yeah, and we're in Texas.
We're like in the lobby just like talking with people and like people just popping off AR-15s and like the gun range literally in the hall right across from us. So that's worth mentioning. I feel like that's a unique experience. I don't feel like people
Do
get
you
that.
want to also tell them how you disappeared during
What?
You disappeared one day on a Sunday. You led worship and then I could not find you. And what were you doing?
I don't know. When was this?
You were out.
I was shooting guns.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There was a guy that I don't remember me disappearing. Really?
Yeah, I remember asking
That is
myself,
so
"Where's
funny.
Joe?"
So there was this guy that went to the church, and he was like, he texted me that week, and he was like, "Hey Joe, do you want to shoot some guns? Like after church, I'm gonna bring my guns to church." And I was like, "Heck yeah, let's do it." So I went in there and shot guns with him. I don't remember disappearing though.
Yeah,
That's
it was.
hilarious. I think
yeah.
it meant like during church service, I was like shooting off guns.
I thought it was. No. I
And
think
then
it was.
you were like, "Babe, you have to go lead worship."
No. It was after worship, and it happened one time, but it did happen. But we're in Texas, y'all.
That's hilarious.
So-
oh my gosh. I do want to say too, because this is way worth mentioning, but if you are married and you want to get into worship ministry, just know that you can't do it without your spouse. Like there is a partnership, there is a unity that you have to have an alignment with your spouse. And if they're not willing to, because if I'm being honest, like everything that I have like accomplished in ministry, it's been because of you. Like it's been because of like our teamwork. It's been because of like you pushing me, you pouring wisdom into me that I needed in those times. And like I remember even when we were applying for our first like full-time ministry position, and I say our because it's like I could not do ministry without you. And so I fully believe that like you're doing this with me. And so I don't think there's no way I'd be doing what I'm doing now in any fashion or sense of the word without you, you know? And I just really believe that. So,
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think that's a deeper conversation because
it is for sure.
I think
I mean, that applies to a lot of things.
it does, but I think your spouse can really change, or not change, but can help support the trajectory of what God has on your life. And I think your spouse can either take away from that, discourage it, or they can support you. And I think if they can see you, even a glimpse of how the Lord sees you, which is how I saw you. I saw all the things that you knew how to do. I saw just even the leader you were to me as like my husband and my fiance. And I just knew intuitively, like, you would be so great in something like this. And I felt compelled. I really believe it was the Holy Spirit to support you in that. So, you know, I think your spouse can have such I think that's why with
impact,
such an impact. And I think that's why with like younger women now, some of the mistakes that I made with dating, I see younger women doing those things. What?
Said you made a lot of them.
I thought you said you met a lot of them.
No, you made a lot of them.
I made a lot of mistakes. And I feel like if I could tell my younger self one thing, I would say be so careful with who you even entertain as far as potential, because they can align with you in your path for the Lord, or they can totally
derail
you and push you off of it. And it is literally such an important thing to not even entertain people who are not going to keep you on mission. So I think that could be a whole other conversation, but
that is a really good conversation. And I mean, I have questions for you that I would love to ask you. Yeah, but I don't want to go too far off the reservation.
We will save that.
Okay. That is a future episode for sure.
It is. How do you think How do you think you handle difficult conversations in worship ministry?
I think I handle them well.
I think you do too.
What do you mean? Like how to? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Like let's
what is
say,
my approach to it? Or
yeah, let's say you have, some things that need to be talked about with
Give me a scenario. Because I feel like it can't be like a blanket answer.
I mean, something that comes to mind is there is some heart posture things on a team with a team member and having to address that for the good of the team, essentially.
I mean, it's matters of the heart are really hard to address. And so I think there's a lot of details that would come into this situation, like, is this a recurring thing? Do I know that there are deeper things happening? Do I know that maybe that's the other thing too, is like, I feel like when you see something, you're seeing the fruit of something. And sometimes you're like, you see the symptoms of something that's deeper. And so you can't just address the fruit. You have to address the root of what's happening. One instance comes to mind, and it wasn't at this church, but there was a volunteer who was just really just not in a good mood, saying things that was just like, dude, like, you can tell you're in a bad mood. You could tell something's happening. And it was more than once. And so I just talked to him at one point. I just said, hey, what's going on, man? Like, this is very unlike you. It's out of your character. Like, I'm seeing some things. I'm hearing some things from other people. Like, what's going on? Because I knew there was something else happening. And he was stressed in work. Work was like really overworking him. He was struggling with some stuff at home. And so those are all things that, like, those are the things you need to address. Those are the things you need to, like, let me love on you, because I know that, like, you're not this person. And so, like, whatever you need, like, I want to be there for you. Instead of just reprimanding and saying, hey, dude, I don't care what you're dealing with, snap out of it. Like, that's not loving, And so that's a heart posture thing that I would say. When I think about other examples, one could be like, hey, I can tell, like, your heart is just not in the right place when it comes to this stuff because of how you're leading, how you're talking, how you're speaking. And I think it'd be best, if maybe we take a step back and, let's really work on some of that stuff before I put you back into a place of leadership. Sometimes that has to happen. And that is also loving on them and just saying, I care about you more than I care about what you can offer. And I want to make sure you're good before I put you in a place where you're pouring out, because you could be pouring out from an empty place right now.
Yeah. I guess this brings me to a question. How do you feel about rest when it comes to a worship team?
I feel like it's really important. I mean, in any area of ministry, I feel like it's important, but specifically worship ministry, knowing not only the weekend experience stuff, right? The serving that happens there, but even during the week, things that are happening. I feel like it's a really, really important thing to have a good rhythm of rest. And as a leader, like, I'm trying to even almost like proactively implement it with team members, even if they don't think it's valuable, even if they don't see the worth in it, they will eventually see the fruit in it, right? So, like, for me, like, practically speaking, I'm not scheduling anybody on my team. If I do, it's like a rare occurrence, and I try not to, but I try to schedule everyone 1 week off, 1 week on, and just have that rhythm and just encourage them. Hey, on the weeks you're off, come with your family. Just come and just, like, receive. And then the weeks you're on, pour out, So I try to implement that, and I have seen just some really good fruit in that. And I think that that's just something that, like, I've just felt convicted on, and it's been a conviction of mine. And everyone has their own rhythm. I'm not saying that needs to be everyone's rhythm, right? Or everyone's practical implementation of something when it comes to rest. You show your team your values by what you tolerate. And for me, like, I just don't tolerate people not resting.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm expressing my values by saying, hey, listen, I'm not asking anything of you this week. You're off. Rest. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not asking you to come serve. and that's not something that I'm putting on your plate. Now, if you choose to go and play at another church or whatever, right? That's on you. Like that is on you. But just know that my heart, like, I want you to take this time to rest and to step away. And I think also a reality is like, we see a lot of burnout in worship teams.
Yeah, we do.
We see a lot of burnout with worship leaders who are leading, every single weekend. And then they hit a wall where it's just like, they either have just had frustration and bitterness built up. They have had, symptoms of not having rest. And then they just hit this place where it's like, they can't go anymore. It's like when you're running a marathon, you hit a wall. Everyone hits the wall, at some point. If you, unless you're like just
even if
wild.
we think we won't.
Yeah, exactly.
We will eventually.
Yeah. And then you start to walk. And after you start to walk, you start to limp. After you start to limp,
you're down.
You stop moving.
Down.
Really, like that's what happens in ministry too. Like, and when I can like spot people who are limping. Like I could see like, dude, they're on their final leg, like for real. And they need to either rest right now, press pause, time out, dude, go rest. Or you keep pushing them and they're not going to be moving anymore.
I think it was about a year and a half ago, you started talking about changing the rhythm of the worship team. Because there were some people that served like every single week because they were so gifted and so like just helpful in what they did. And so it made sense to just keep using them. And at some point you started talking about, I think I'm going to change this. I think I'm not going to use the same people every single week and I'm going to start alternating.
Yeah.
And I remember when you did that, we were like, well, two things are going to happen. Either you're going to do this and we're going to be missing some spots on a Sunday,
right?
Or the Lord is going to bring more people. And then the Lord brought more people.
Brought a lot more people.
Literally, like you did that. And I think it was like a couple months later, the team just started growing.
Yeah.
And not just growing, but growing with like really incredible people.
Yeah.
And so I am a witness to seeing you do something that I think is just different. I think it's kind of not the norm. And then I saw the Lord honor it, and I saw him grow the team to a place that is just crazy. So it's really cool from an outside perspective to have seen that and seen what that, that decision brought.
Well, and I'll just say like, the decision was fueled by my personal journey and like coming to a place where like I was burnt out.
Yeah.
To the point where like, I wasn't even eating because of like how tired I was. And like I had like a stomach ulcer and couldn't keep anything down. And like, you remember that? And like,
I do.
It just was like this, my body, because for me personally, like when I'm stressed, I don't like comprehend that I'm stressed, but my body will like start like shutting down on me. And I'm like, what is happening? And it's because I'm absorbing all the stress into my body. Anyway, so going through that experience definitely fueled my decision later on in life of like, this is important. This is really important. And as a church too, like we just value rest, we value Sabbath. So.
Yeah, we do. We are in a great church in that way where they do take Sabbath seriously.
Yeah.
And I remember, this is a kind of funny. I remember when we were making the decision to leave Houston, because we were back in Houston, and you had said to our pastor at the time, we were at our going away lunch, and you said, I really want to be at a church that values Sabbath and values rest. And like so quickly, and I'm sure it was from some personal experiences, but so quickly that person said, that's going to be really hard to find. And our next church that we went to, that really wasn't the case for us. We really were in a season where we were working a lot. You were working a lot, and we did not have Sabbath and rest, to the point where they gave you a check back because you never took time off. And if you're salaried, they
because
give
I couldn't
you
take time off.
You really couldn't. There was so much. I mean, you went into ministry when the pandemic happened, and there was just so much work that had to happen.
Yeah.
But when we came to this church, it was like a breath of fresh air because they really do value Sabbath. And so, you know, some people might tell you, you know, that's not possible, or in ministry, that's just how it is. But it doesn't have to be that way.
I agree.
What instrument do you notice the most when it's off?
When it's off?
Like when it's not, you know, on time or on beat?
Drums for sure.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, drums are the most obvious, but I think drums or like a singer who's like just not on pitch. Like I'm like, oh, nails on a chalkboard. Like, which is hard for me. Like, I try not to like analyze services, you know, when I go to other churches or go and be a part of it. I'm like, I try not to do that. But some things you're just like worshiping, you're like, yes, God. And then it's like the drummer's off and you're like it just throws you, you know, you're like, whoa, like, okay, like let's get that back on. You know, like, I don't know. I'm a drummer first. So like drums are like the thing that I listen to when I'm listening to a song. Like it's like drums first. Like I'm like, how do the drums sound like, you know? And then after that, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's a great song. Yeah.
Well, that's our time
for
today. So I really enjoyed hearing some of your thoughts on all of this. It was insightful to me. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you for asking.
So thank you for watching this episode of the Luminate House Podcast. If you feel like someone could benefit from hearing what we spoke about today, share it with them and rate this episode. It really helps with the algorithm so we can get this in front of as many people as possible.
Amen.
We will see you in next week's episode. Bye.
Bye.